Yes, hi, Mr. Grant. How are you? It seems to me that this lesbian lady that you had on the radio a few moments ago seems like the true Nazi, in that...
Gloria Steinem also goes around calling the right Nazis, making speeches. This woman, when you had her on, I thought it was Gloria Steinem. So I have a theory. I think Gloria Steinem is a closet lesbian. That's my opinion, Bob. Thank you.
On WABC, the question is, do we need the adjective closet? Or would that be, let's see, closet? It says, if lesbian is a noun, closet, adjective, be describing what kind of. Okay, yeah, that'd be an adjective. Alex, you're at WABC. What's on your mind?
Good day, Bob. Recent events caused me to take a look
Alex,
back
when did you last call about that show?
About a week ago or so.
About a week ago?
Yeah.
Seems though we've been getting a lot of Alexes lately. Suddenly it's become a popular name.
It's always been.
Yeah, 3 times. I really have serious doubts about the veracity of what you just said.
I'm sorry about that. Well, what I'd like to say is I basically went back to 2 books recently from about a little over a decade ago because the recent events seemed so related to them, and they were 2 books I think probably you yourself and many of your listeners are familiar with.
You know something, Alex? The more I listen to you, the more I'm convinced you're lying. You have called this week. Once a week, Alex. Once a week. Even for a genius like you. The more I listen to that voice, it sounds as though in 1978 he ate a pear that he never was able to completely swallow.
I think we ought to recognize that we just have a plain pathological liar in the White House. No questions about it. He has all the symptoms and the excuses, the backtracks, and the holier-than-thou attitude.
You know,
unbelievable.
Richard, I'm forced to agree with you. But you know what is so disheartening? This was brought out during the course of the campaign on the Bob Grant Show, day in and day out. And I proudly plead guilty to being extremely partisan in this campaign.
Did you get a chance to see any of the Conservative Political Action Committee on C-SPAN over the weekend?
Not a one, because I was in a town that doesn't have C-SPAN, some real Gavones town that does not have C-SPAN.
They honored Dan Quayle Friday night. They gave him an award as their Man of the Year. And when he got up to speak, he told the people there how he was ridiculed for not knowing how to spell throughout his whole term in Washington. But he knew how to spell taxes. And it wasn't spelled investment, and it wasn't spelled contribution.
I'm sure a little bit about vaccinations, Bob. I don't know how you feel or if you're very much aware of the fact that everybody seems to take for granted that they are actually protecting our children from diseases such as measles, mumps, and etc. But if you study any medical history or epidemiology, you realize that there's absolutely no credible evidence whatsoever that suggests that vaccines had anything to do with the disappearance of any of those diseases. And
then how did those diseases disappear?
Most people who do research on this point to the fact that basically civilization and sanitation really, because the diseases were already on a steady decline.
What caused diphtheria?
The diphtheria bacteria.
I beg your pardon?
The diphtheria bacteria.
Okay. Where did the bacteria come from?
They're prevalent in nature as we speak.
Why is it that prior to the diphtheria vaccination, hundreds of thousands of people would die each year from diphtheria?
Well, explain this, Bob. If immunizations had anything to do with it, why then in Europe, when mass vaccinations did not take hold, why did the same trend continue, the disappearance of those diseases? Now, they didn't vaccinate over there. We did. The same exact thing happened. There's absolutely no evidence to suggest that vaccinations had anything to do with the demise.
You know, you're really speaking like an idiot to come on and say vaccinations.
Well, you're an idiot because you don't know anything about it.
Oh, are you a doctor?
Yes.
A doctor of what?
I'm a practicing pediatrician.
A doctor of what?
I'm a pediatrician.
A doctor of what?
Of medicine.
A doctor of medicine? Where'd you get your degree?
Yale University.
The School of Medicine?
Yes. Where else?
Where else? I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I don't believe that you are a doctor.
Well, it's pure unadulterated ignorance for you to sit there.
You do not ring true. You do not ring true.
Well, ask me any question you would like to about this subject, and I will give you a great answer.
You know, if you really were a doctor, you would be highly insulted by what I just said. You wouldn't want to pass a test. You wouldn't want to prove a point. What did you see, Tony Curtis in The Great Imposter recently?
Oh, Bob, you're
You are. I tell you something. You sound like a real immature jerk. And if you were really a doctor, you'd be busy. You wouldn't be listening to the Bob Grant show. You wouldn't be calling up, getting into this childish argument that people get into in saloons. This is the type of argument that they get into in a saloon. What an idiot. I mean, why would the guy try to pass himself off as a doctor of medicine? Why didn't he say at the very beginning, as a doctor, I'd like... Hey, Chris of Brick, New Jersey, you're a fink! That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Before we let Biff give his usual political diatribe, let me remind you, if you want to make contact, we do, believe it or not. All right, Biff, go ahead.
Hi, Bob. Thanks. I have to salute you for keeping the pressure on Clinton, because I think you and other conservatives, both Republicans and Democrats like myself, might have beaten the liberals because we actually got Clinton to put spending cuts before Congress first. If they can get that through, then we can really fight about tax increases. But right now, let's support Clinton and other Republicans and Democratic conservatives to make spending cuts the first issue that they deal with. That's a monumental change. Reagan couldn't do it, Bush couldn't do it, but maybe Clinton can pull it off.
Well, I never thought I'd live to see the day, although I think it has happened maybe once or twice before, that you and I have agreed. But
I have a few of the dents in my armor.
Who cares?
And then if I did have any redeeming qualities, go on with those. And one of those is to provide a winner for New York and for Yankee fans.
Big deal.
Spring training games Saturday, March 6th on the Yankee Station.
What are you charging for a hot dog, George?
WABC.
We got to carry that games again this year. Oof. Oh, lights, get off my phone. Stupid.
Tonight, I just kind of...
Can you imagine Dapper Dave coming back and saying that...
no ties for all the students.
Right. So it's all absurd. It's just a part of his schnoring and posturing, and he's just another fake, phony fraud. See, I didn't call him the attendant. I can call him a fake, phony fraud. I can call him virtually every name in the book. Call him an attendant, and my heavens, the world stops dead in its tracks.
Exactly, and like you say, a lot of whites are intimidated by this.
Oh, they are. Right. Forget about it. Hey, listen. I gave a speech. I was giving a speech Friday night at the Holiday Inn North. And because I wasn't on the radio, I alluded to a certain person who at that time was in Tokyo as the attendant. 5 white people got up and walked out.
How disgusting.
Okay.
That is absolutely abominable.
Right. Okay, thank you.
First, the American humanitarian aid is, of course, well-intentioned, but the warring factions over there perceive this as taking sides in a civil war and American interference in their internal affairs, which is prohibited by the United Nations Charter. American aid to Bosnia is not welcomed and is, in fact, violently opposed. It is against American interests, and it should be discontinued at once.
Oh, cut it out.
Yeah, the second point...
What are you doing? You're reading a proclamation? And it should be discontinued at once.
Yes.
I have spoken. I will go back into my tent.
I'd be happy to hear your views on that.
My views are that you're a schmuck. Get off my phone. What a jerk.
5 people. Only 5 lives, it said, right? Only 5 people.
I didn't see the word only.
No, I'm not saying you said. They said only 5 people. And, the reason why, first of all, was 12:18 if it was lunch hour. Second of all, they couldn't get a bomb big enough in there to take the building down. And that's what the intentions were, to take that building down if they could possibly do it. But they couldn't get enough explosives in there to do so. But the FBI is always putting it down a little bit. Oh, they were just trying to, give us a little message here.
No, I never heard that statement from the FBI.
They were playing it down, Bob.
I never heard anybody from the FBI say they were just trying to give us a little message. I never heard that statement.
No, they didn't say exactly.
This is coming out of your own febrile mind, your own imagination.
They were playing it down.
Nobody said that, and you know it. Thank you.
Okay.
I go from one Gavone to another. That's it, the March of the Gavones. Maybe we could get... who could we get to compose March of the Gavones? Let's see. Serge Prokofiev is dead. Peter Tchaikovsky's dead. Sergei Rachmaninoff. They're all dead. The people who could write the March of the Gavones. Must be somebody. Maybe Andre Previn. Some composer. The March of the Gavones. That's what we are. We could use that as our new theme song.
about that great American patriot, Jesse Jackson, and the upcoming meetings with the baseball owners down in Phoenix the next 4 days?
Yeah, to tell him to put an egg in his shoe and beat it.
Believe me, I wish I could get him alone for a little while. Believe me. The point I'm trying to make, Bob, is that people complain. You complain to one another. They complain to you every day. Why don't they complain to the people that are responsible? This morning I sat down and wrote a letter to Fred Wilpon. I wrote a letter to the baseball commissioner, and a letter to George Steinbrenner.
Who is the baseball commissioner?
I don't even know. Do they have one, Bob?
No, they really don't.
Yeah, they got nobody.
They have a fake, phony, fraud, two-bit jerk by the name of
Selig, right?
Bud Selig,
yeah, okay.
who proved that he talks out of both sides of his mouth when he was interviewed by Steve Croft on 60 Minutes last night.
Yeah.
Offensive layoffs. Meaning that when you're in a state like New York State, in which there are so many protected groups, the gays, the women, the disabled, the old, etc., that when the time comes for laying people off, the layoffs have to be so skewed against white male heterosexuals so that they can be bulletproof in court, because all these other people immediately call up their lawyers as soon as they hear a layoff's coming. So what's happened is white males in these places like New York State de facto have less constitutional rights than other people. We are systematically being stripped of our equal constitutional rights. Now, the thing that really drives me nuts is the specter of an unelected official, possibly the most powerful person in Washington, Hillary Clinton, and her two sidekicks from the Isle of Lesbos, having this 2-to-1 anti-male prejudicial hiring scheme in the government. It is so outrageous and so unconstitutional, I can't believe that people aren't screaming about this. Now, the other thing that scares me even more is when you have the prospect next year of a huge tax increase on corporations, and the energy tax, you're going to have more layoffs coming next year. Now they're announcing that they want a new government/business partnership. Now, you know what that means. That means that they're going to get their quota tentacles into as many corporations as they can, because they want to bring them all under the Title I legislation. And I just cannot believe that people aren't screaming more about this quota stuff and how our Constitution is being subverted by this politically correct neo-fascist type of one-party government that we've got now.
Well, we share our amazement at the lack of consternation over what is happening. We can only, I can only conclude that maybe Slick Willie is just what his nickname says he is. He's so slick that he has completely bamboozled the CEOs. He's charmed the pants off of the pompous oafs in the Chamber of Commerce. And right now he has seduced all of them.
Well,
maybe the art of seduction was taught to him by his boss, the one and only Hillary Rodham.
And now listening to this last news, but the first newsbreaker, we had the sole guy who didn't want that woman elected to the nominated to the Board of Elections. I mean, couldn't he just admit that he was getting credit for doing something right instead of going out and saying, oh, don't worry, I have black friends and I didn't want to do it because she was black and I wanted to, this woman who was Puerto Rican and I'm not a racist? Nobody's saying you're a racist.
Well, that's why we're losing. That's why it's lost. People say, why are you so pessimistic about the future? And the interview with Assemblyman Proskin is a classic study in why there's really no hope for sanity.
I don't know why people are afraid of these people, like this thing with the sports. I want to know, besides for the question about why so many players are allowed to be black and the front office people are not allowed to be white, don't you think it should reflect the population? I don't see that 50% of the population is black, so why should 50% of the front office people be black?
Well, you know, another case was when this little twerp, this little walking, talking piece of garbage by the name of Bob Costas, this guy who's got his nose so far up certain orifices that you can't even see him half the time, he said to Paul Tagliabue, 78% of the players are black. He's talking about the NFL.
Right.
And only 12% of the office personnel, or 16% of the office personnel are black. What are you going to do about this? Now, Tagliabue,
what should I do?
Tagliabue should have said, Well, yeah, we'll have to do something about that 78% who are black. You know what I mean?
Right, that's right.
But why did that little twerp, that little weasel, Bob Costas, ask the question? Why? Because Bob Costas is part of the problem. And the joke is going to be on him because Jesse Jerkson wants to have a revamping of who's in the broadcast booth. So maybe he'll see that Costas has a white skin, and he'll say, hey, twerp, hey, you little weasel, hey, you little apple polisher, cleaning it up, get out of here.
Well, I heard that some of the people that Jesse Jackson claimed, some of the black people that he claimed could have held front office jobs, he said this one, and that Willie Mays, I think, was one of the examples, and I heard on the sports show on your station that some of those people were offered jobs and they turned them down.
Well, Joe Morgan turned down a managing job. Now, I don't know about Willie, but I think Joe Morgan would have made an excellent manager, but that's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is, we have people who are so intimidated, like Assemblyman Proskin, that even when they're right, it doesn't make any difference.
What can you do? And I don't know why you were so surprised about the St. Patrick's Day parade. You really thought that
I'm not surprised. Hold it. Time. I'm not surprised. Just pointing it out to the listeners, that's all. I just wanted to give the pusillanimous pair, those little pipsqueaks, I wanted to give them the kudos they so richly deserve. That's all.
I'm especially thankful to him for making me feel, for making me understand the point of view that he was trying to bring across, and also for qualifying it. It made me feel that perhaps I should not blow his opinion off and just merely dismiss him as another bigoted Republican. I, too, have my hand on that voting machine lever, and I intend to use it for anyone who offends me unnecessarily.
Well, you say offends you unnecessarily.
Yes.
I offend, but that's necessary. You understand that?
No, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't understand.
I've never offended you?
Oh, very often.
I see. Well, the more you listen, the more I will offend.
Good. I don't mind. I don't care whether you do or not. You're not in control of my personal life, but that gentleman is.
I see. Where are you from, Ralph?
This is the third time you have asked me that ridiculous question, and for the third time I'm going to tell you. I was born in Williamsburg in the year of 1951. You want to ask me some questions about the neighborhood? I'll be more than glad to answer.
Why are you so hostile, Ralph?
Because you've asked me that question for the third time in a row. When you got these people calling in from Howard Beach with their obviously Italo-American accent.
No, there's no such thing as an Italo-American accent.
Well, the John Gotti accent.
There's no such thing. What are you suggesting? That if they sound like John Gotti, they're Italians?
Yes, that's it.
You know what you are? You're a bigoted jerk, and you're not really, and you're not really from Williamsburg. You're not really from Williamsburg.
You know it all. You know it all.
Hey, you know what you are? You know what you are?
Test me.
You're going to be. You know you're ashamed of where you're really from. You're ashamed of where your ancestors. Oh, get off the phone, you creep.
Must have struck fear in the hearts of those racist, multicultural, politically correct, fascist pigs. Really, because, I mean, they're talking about a parade against you. You know, but aside from that, what I wanted to say is that...
Well, if they have any signs, I hope they hold the signs up high so people know that the parade or whatever it is against me and not anybody else.
No, I heard some moron last night on Jay Dine and Eli talk about it.
Oh, him!
I was furious.
Uh-huh.
But when...
Of Slick Willie's insatiable appetite for power. And the article points out that Clinton is taking measures to bribe business with government benefits in order to get gradual, increasing government control and influence over business. And they quote a former top leader of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce who was removed because he was politically incorrect as far as Clinton is concerned, who remarked, and these are his actual words, that Clinton shows tendencies of collectivism, corporate statism, bordering actually on fascism. Those are the actual quotes in that article.
Absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And I want to say this kind of jibes with Clinton's old radicalism, Hanoi Bill, back in the when he wasn't merely a draft dodger, but he actually was a pro-Viet Cong activist, somewhat similar to Jane Fonda. So it seems the leopard hasn't changed his spots. I mean, this is really a cause for concern.
Well, it's cause for concern for you and for me, and I suspect millions of other Americans, but not enough to really count. I read that article, and after reading it, I thought to myself, it's not going to make any difference that this is so, because there's something in the mindset of too many Americans willing to either A, totally overlook the overwhelming evidence that this man is dangerous, or B, to say, so what? You understand what I'm saying?
You know, no, I never noticed this lust for power on the part of Bush or Reagan or even Jimmy Carter or even Nixon or Ford. I do notice that Clinton and his Lady Macbeth seem to have that lust for raw power.
Well, I think you've characterized it correctly. What is more disturbing is that the Evans and Novak characterization of the seduction of corporate America is most alarming.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be surprised, because these titans of industry, they're just a bunch of selfish slobs anyway. They really don't care about America. They're just thinking about feathering their own nest. The interesting thing is, eventually, though, they will be sorry that they got in bed with the devil.
Right, I agree.
In order to stop these terrorist attacks, I think this country must be more fair-handed when it comes to the Arab world. We seem to condone Israel, regardless of whatever atrocities they perpetrate, either overtly against the Palestinians or covertly against this country. You know, remember the liberty. It is time that we stop, being the supposed policemen of the world. We rule by might when it's safe to do so. A case in point being the unwarranted bombing of Iraq.
Unwarranted?
With the killing of...
Unwarranted? Unwarranted? You swine. I thought you'd come up with some cutie like that in view of the fact that you've done that in the past. You swine. What swine? Frank calling us?
I hope we don't waste one dime on the trial for that bomb-making bastard Mohammed. I hope we just put him in a room with about 12 issues of the Quran and make him read page by page, everything. And then we smack him till he's dizzy, till he's delirious. And then we kick him to the ground. You keep kicking him till he explodes. Yeah, that's what we should do. Or maybe dig a deep, dark pit. A real deep pit and fill it with cats. A bunch of scummy, scabby cats. And then you put some catnip around his neck and you kick him in there. Yeah.
On WABC, let's say hello to Michael. You know what's really mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling, are these gentlemen who call, these guys who call, I won't call them gentlemen, these guys who call, who are obviously, and yet they sound so infantile, so juvenile. Am I the only one that perceives this, that notices that the caliber of the individuals calling is getting scummier by the day?
Yeah, but I can't believe you advocate that. You just tell the people, get guns and shoot people? Come on, Bob. You've been doing this a long time. I like your show. I agree with you, but advocating getting guns and shooting people?
Did I advocate that?
Well, you just said it 15 minutes ago. I can't
What did I say?
You said you hope that you tell people that they get a gun and go shoot other people.
No, I didn't say that at all. I said, what do you want me to do? You want me to tell you to go shoot somebody? Because people keep saying, Bob, what can we do? What can we do? I said, what do you want me to tell you? To go shoot somebody? I didn't advocate it, Michael. Although when it comes to you, it might not be a bad idea.
I want you to say...
Oh, get off my phone, you freak. Bonkers, and getting even more so. I don't think there's any doubt about it. You pick up any newspaper, pick up the New York Times, for example. Go ahead, pick it up, look at the cover, look at the front page. And what do you see? You see two perverted broads, two females who are deviant, and they're standing looking, one is looking at a little bouquet of flowers, and the other is looking at her inamorata. These are two demented broads. They're looking at each other, and they're standing there, and naturally they're smiling like it's going out of style, because that was the first day for unmarried New Yorkers to register as domestic partners. And these two chickie-poos have combined their last names. One took naturally kept her own last name and took the others, and the other kept her own last name and took the others. So they each have 3 names. No matter how you slice it, they practice a perversion called lesbianism. Now, make no mistake, I'm not here to preach about the evils of lesbianism. I couldn't care less what these 2 individuals do in the privacy of their own lives. I mean that. I do not care. What they do once they are alone in the confines of their own domicile is really not my concern. And I do not intend, by what I'm saying, to indicate that I would want to intrude into their own private lives. Now you may say, well, if Bob Grant feels that way, why is he saying what he's saying? I'm saying what I'm saying because it is now public policy. And the policy is such that inevitably will cost Mr. and Mrs. Taxpayers some money. That plus the affront to the American family, to the traditional values, man and woman, in holy matrimony. In effect, what this is saying is that it really doesn't make any difference if you're the same sex or not. It really doesn't make any difference if you're married or not. If you go to register as a domestic partnership, then the city of New York says, hey, we classify you no different than the schlubs who are married. There was a time when these 2 freaks of nature would not have been flaunting their perversion. But there they are, proud as can be. And why shouldn't they be? I mean, after all, they've become celebrities. Front page of all the newspapers. On the first day for unmarried New Yorkers to register as domestic partners, they combined their family names last year. It is absolutely sick. They want us to validate their perversion. That's what frosts me. They want us to validate it. And by golly, thanks to a man who formerly had another job, but now is paid to be the mayor of the city of New York, thanks to him, they've got it.
Cuomo using the World Trade Center tragedy for his own political posturing and taking the digs at the Republicans.
Because the newspapers either A, think it was okay, or B, they are so intimidated by the Spachim. And I, too, had hoped that there would be some other organ of the media besides the Bob Grant show would call attention to how demagogic this skunk is. But
do you think it shows how weak the Democratic Party is?
How weak?
Yes, by him acting like that.
No, I think what it shows is that he is a mean bastard who just can't be decent at a time that politics should have nothing to do with the situation.
Right.
It was totally gratuitous. And the absurdity to compare Dan Quayle ridiculing some of the things New York City was doing, ridiculing David Dinkins and Mario Cuomo, to compare that with blowing up the World Trade Center is utterly indefensible. It's inexcusable.
And as a Republican, I'm greatly offended to being compared to terrorists by him.
Well, he's really a Spachim if there ever was one. I despise him. Let's try Ron on the line from Matawan. Yes, Ron.
Slick Willie reminds me of the con artist and the music man. You know, he pops into town, does a quick song and dance, and then packs up and leaves just before the locals realize they've been fleeced. Last week, some young woman said to him, "Oh, Mr. President, I didn't vote for you, but I wish I had." Anybody that doesn't believe that this act isn't staged must also believe that the magician actually saws the girl in half. It's really getting pathetic. Last week he took his road show to Rutgers, which is no surprise. I mean, Rutgers is an ugly little pocket of socialism where they have a communist, Paul Robeson, actually has a building named in his honor, where they lionize Daniel Ortega, and where Republican visitors are literally assaulted. So the very fact that the people at that show yesterday gave him a warm welcome is proof enough that there must be something terribly wrong with this economic plan. The masses are asses, Bob, but, eventually they're going to wake up to this guy. And my only fear is that by the time they do, by the time they know they've just been fleeced, it'll be too late. And by the time 1996 rolls around, they'll be so befogged by snake oil that it won't even matter anymore. Thank you, Bob.
Excellent commentary.
Your opinion. The first in what may be a result of perception in these types of organizations that America, by electing a spineless administration, doesn't have the resolve to respond to these things. I think we're going to be perceived with this president as a weak nation, resulting from his every move he makes trying to castrate the military, weaken it. They're going to see us as weak, and they're going to figure that we're easy pickings, and that we're just going to sit back and take it. His first reaction was, let's not overreact to this. Absurd. We should be mad as hell. But his reaction is, well, let's look and see what happened and not overreact. Cuomo's brilliant statement, the reaction of New York City was so wonderful, which it was. The emergency services people did an incredible job.
And he also pointed out that he says there were white Americans, black Americans, blah blah blah. He had to go through that litany.
Well,
because his nose was getting a little pale, and he wanted to keep the hue a darker shade.
Yeah, standard stuff for him.
Yeah, standard stuff because he is the putz of pander. I used to call him the Prince of Pander. He doesn't even deserve that. He's the putz of pander. Thank you very much.
Connection to the Rothschild, so a Jew should be proud of the Confederate flag. But she must have found out that Jeffries has learned about it, so she wants to...
Hey, look, I tell you this. She's just another left-wing liberal, far lefto. So what do you want from me?
She's a limousine...
And here's somebody who's talking about the capitalist system, investing your money and all that, and yet her politics would undo the underpinnings of the American economic system. Thank you for the call. What the hell is she getting into the act for heaven's sake?
Also, one quick thing, if I may, about in defense of Janet Reno. There was a previous caller who called up about Janet Reno.
I'm listening.
Oh, okay. He sort of alluded to the fact that she wasn't qualified. I'm originally from Miami, and I just want to say that she's very well respected down there and is highly educated and has done a lot for education and has won her elections by landslide.
Are you going to make statements, or are you going to put a question mark at the end of every statement? Because that gets on my nerves. She's done a lot for education. She's won by landslides. You know what I mean?
Well, if I'm...
It gets on my nerves, Gloriana, it gets on my nerves. And that wasn't the issue. The issue is, why the delay? What have they found? Have they found anything?
Well, what are they digging for? I mean, if the woman has done a good job, what are they trying to dig out?
I think they want to avoid another embarrassment. I think they want to... Here's Rich from Mount Vernon. Hello to you, Rich.
We are the Gavones. We listen to Bob in the afternoon. He's finished at 7. It's much too soon. We are the Gavones. We are the Gavones. Mario Azinda me Jose Provino Spachim today. We are the Gavones. We are the Gavones. Bob defeats the drones with rationale. Can't take the heat. Get off his phone, pal. We are the Gavones. We are the Gavones. Bob is radio's unquestioned king. Others can't take it. They run from the ring. We are the Gavones. We are the Gavones. Bob, if you ever leave, what shall we do? We'll surely grieve. You speak for us. I wear my gratitude unshamed on my sleeve. Unshamed on my sleeve. There it is, Bob, the March of the Gavones. You asked for it. Present company excluded, of course. Thank you.
And he concluded with a vintage Frank of Queens, thank you. I'd like to get a group together. I'd like to get a group together like I had that big group of people up at the Mount... in Ellenville, New York, when we had a weekend in Ellenville at the Neville. That was it, the Neville. 1,256 people saying a message to Mario. I'd like to get the same number of people to intone thank you. Diane? What is disturbing some constitutional experts, although they're not politically correct because you don't hear them interviewed on all the shows, What concerns them is the law says that private citizens cannot work on public policy, and if they are involved with public policy, their meetings have to be covered. Their meetings have to be publicized. Here, Hillary is a private citizen. She wasn't elected to anything. She's holding all these meetings on the health care program, and the press is barred, and the press doesn't complain. If it were the last administration, they'd be going crazy. Going to accept being shunted aside, being discriminated against, and the question now is the backlash, if you will, is the backlash now about to be manifested?
Mm-hmm. Well, I personally don't think it's as much a matter of reverse discrimination. That doesn't interest me as much as the incendiary division of the student body. I think what I said here is that what I call a free agent market. The prices have gone up because every college, from good to bad, wants 10 to 12% blacks in the student body.
Why? What is this obsession?
I think that's because of diversity. As I try to say that.
What's so great about diversity, for heaven's sake?
Well, that's what I think that's a legitimate question. 10 years ago, diversity was a byproduct of opening all doors to minorities. So everyone would strive and achieve, and you'd get diversity as a byproduct of everybody trying hard. Now, diversity really works as a quota system, that it's group rights. And if the group has rights, it's entitled to a spot on the college campus. The most astounding plan I have ever seen is the one in California. Tom Hayden introduced a bill. It got sidelined by the recession, but it was going to guarantee every ethnic group diplomas in proportion to their proportion of high school seniors in the state system. If you had 10% Cambodian or 13% Transylvanian, you got that percentage of degrees at Berkeley and the whole college system, which is astounding. They might as well give them out at birth, because if you're going to give them out by pigmentation or racial stock, then achievement has nothing to do with it.
Sure, have a lottery, which would be a lottery for Asians, a lottery for this, and a lottery for that. You mentioned Cambodians. It's interesting to note that many Cambodians who came here in the aftermath of the Vietnam War, many Cambodians, many Vietnamese, have overcome tremendous obstacles, and without benefit of affirmative action programs, have acquitted themselves quite well.
Sure. Actually, a lot of Asians are getting hurt by this group rights thing, because they're lumped together with Chinese American and Japanese American students who have long traditions of achievement and family solidarity. But if you get a splinter Asian group like the Hmong, who are our allies in mountain people, very remote mountain people, living in very primitive conditions in Vietnam, and brought over here because they would have been killed if they'd stayed. And they're very hardworking, but they don't have the tradition of educational excellence, so they are having to strive 4 times as hard as anybody else. But they're lumped together with the successful Asian groups, and they lose out in this group lottery, because just as all whites are the same, if you play the skin game, the Irish, Italians are still well underrepresented on college campuses, but you don't break it down by ethnic group, you break it down by skin color, so that the Irish and Italians, who really have very few, I can speak that, I'm half Irish, half Italian, have not anywhere near the number that they should have by group rights theory, but they're not counted. They're just lumped together with other white groups, and they lose out. So the skin color thing hurts some whites, some Asians, and some Hispanic peoples, because they're all lumped together in this great group lottery. It's a crazy system.
Well, it is crazy, and the question is, how long do we allow it to go on? You know, if we were talking about a disease, and I think you agree, John, that we have medical, biological diseases, and we have social diseases. I consider this to be a social disease. And when you have a disease, you ask, from whence does this disease come? What is the genesis of this disease? And I'm asking, and at the risk of sounding self-serving, John, I seem to be the only one in America asking, how in the world we got off on this foot, and why this runaway train is allowed to continue to careen the way it is.
Well, I think it's pretty. I think it's easy to see how we got into this situation, because it's a debate between equality of opportunity and equality of result. And when the doors were open, and the proportions didn't break down as 10% black, it only was like 1 or 2% black, then people screamed for diversity, which meant give us the rest of the 10%. And because people wanted blacks to do well, they weren't too critical about the way in which it was happening. As Fox Butterfield says in the New York Times, and it seems to be absolutely true, the reason we have a free agent market is everybody wants 10% black, but there's only 1 or 2% black students who get over 600 on math and verbal on the SAT. So you have a great disparity between demand, which is 10% or more, and supply, which is only 1.5%. So the kids that are well qualified can bid up the price. It's a classic supply and demand imbalance.
You know, this is so hypocritical. They talk about wanting diversity, say in the journalism school, the law school, the medical school, and so forth. Why don't they concern themselves equally with diversity on the football field, on the basketball court? When the University of Michigan football team or the University of Wisconsin football team or any football team goes on the road to make money for the school, play a football game, all the Alumni Association is interested in is a winning football team.
Yeah, I think the whole racial quota stuff is going to come to grief. There was a movement in Washington, D.C. To redistribute Washington Redskins season tickets by race. And I think that's amazing. And then they started to say, well, 50% of the NFL is black. Why can't the ticket holders be black? Well, this is a kind of racism that's creeping up on us. It's a well-intentioned racialism that comes very close to being racism.
John, I don't see any. I don't see any silver lining out there. I don't see any hope to stem this insanity.
Well, it's not going to change on the college campus because that's the that's the stronghold of people who think everything's going great, and affirmative action is so deeply entrenched there that I don't think it's going to change for the next 10 or 15 years. I think in the colleges you're going to see racial quotas, very naked racial quotas now from now on. And the rest of the real world, I think other patterns can take hold, but the campuses are off on their own.
This is totally against the Constitution. It's against the so-called Civil Rights Act of 1964. We were told at the time they were debating it that it was not going to be a quota system, that we were told that the law says clearly that a person is not to be discriminated against because of race, religion, creed, color, national origin, and all that. And yet, apparently, if you're a white male, it's okay to discriminate against you. But let's go to another point. Let's go beyond the outrage done to the violation of the Constitution. Let's go to practical, mundane matters. When will the time come when a person is wheeled into an operating room and he finds that he's got to be operated on by an affirmative action surgeon? That may sound far-fetched to some people, but it really isn't far-fetched in light of all the insanity that is going on already.
Mm-hmm. Well, Stephen Carter touched on some of this, and he's a black professor of law. In his book, Memoirs of an Affirmative Action Baby, which is a very good and thoughtful book. And he came to the conclusion that there was good and bad, but that blacks could use a slight edge. But what's happening now is that the system is going on behind the scenes, that no one is telling the truth about who's admitted with what marks. And I think that's a combustible situation. I might favor certain plans to give blacks a temporary edge in compensation.
Why?
Well, I think you can... let me say that it's a plausible argument, maybe one that you reject, but it's a plausible argument that having been held down so long, blacks are entitled to a boost up.
Wait a minute. We're talking about blacks who are 18 years of age and maybe up to 21, 23, 24. We'll say even 25. Mm-hmm. They were born long after Brown versus Topeka, Kansas, long after the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Where have they been downtrodden?
Well, I understand the argument. It's just that other people would argue, I'm not so sure how I feel, but other people would argue that the culture of oppression, that the results of slavery have held blacks back.
Oh, please.
Now, again, my point is this. You and I might differ on that point, or your listeners might differ, but at least we'd have it out in the open. What's happening now is this is all happening hypocritically behind the scenes because, well, it came out with that Georgetown case last year. A kid who worked in the admissions office for Georgetown Law published in the Georgetown student paper the marks by race of whites and blacks. And lo and behold, the white marks of freshmen and at the law school were much, much higher than the blacks. And the college went nuts. They wanted him banned for life. They wanted to punish and expel the woman who ran the newspaper that published it.
Yep.
And the reason for all this anger is because you're not supposed to know these numbers. Now, there may be a reason for the numbers. Maybe Georgetown is reaching way down to black kids who have a lot on the ball but never quite went to the right school or whatever, and they can see things that we can't. Well, fine, let's have that out in the open. I had a discussion with Father Robert Driner, a Jesuit priest who is on the faculty there, an old friend of mine, and he used to be in Congress.
Oh, him. He's a left-winger from way back.
Well, let me tell you what he said. His argument was, look, he graduated from Georgetown Law in 51, and they had never had a black on the faculty in the school. Never in 87 years had a black, and they want to compensate for it. I said, fine, but you're not talking the language of compensation. You're talking the language of Baki, which says that the whole pool that you pick from before you discuss race is all qualified for the law school. And these numbers say a lot of these kids are just not qualified. Yeah. So you're not being honest about Baki. You've driven the whole process underground. And I talked to several other law professors, both left and right, and they said that's right. It's gotten to be a dishonest, furtive game that the admissions people play. And any system that makes admissions officers lie and be furtive is not a good system. It's building more combustion for the future.
And it's adding insanity on top of insanity. For example, John, I'm sure that you, being a learned man, your geography is good enough for you to know the Iberian Peninsula contains two nations, Spain and Portugal. And yet, if a person comes from one part of that Iberian Peninsula, he gets affirmative action allowances. Mm-hmm. Somebody just hired recently, lighter complected than you or I. She's got a Spanish name. There's no such thing as Hispanic. So they hired her as an affirmative action deal. Would you tell me what sense that makes? Mm-hmm. I mean, what you talk about? Oh, please, John, I can't take this anymore. It's just so insane.
Well, that's the result of ethnic policies. I happen to know, I won't name it, a Spanish magazine that was edited by two guys, and one of them was a squash champion, and the other one was in the Social Register. So these guys could get hired by any publication under affirmative action and formal quotas. But heck, I mean, they can buy and sell me and most of my friends. So I don't see to what extent the society should have to help already successful people.
John, I appreciate you coming to the telephone. Thank you.
Okay.
Will no doubt be a liberal.
How about if the nominee's Mario?
Mario could be subject to a lot of cross-examination.
You don't think Clinton's leaning that way?
People take it for granted that he is. I don't see any evidence that he is. Remember, underneath the veneer of cordiality, there is still resentment. There's still resentment for a lot of things that were said last year. So I'm not all that sure that he's going to nominate the Spachim.
Okay, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you. Wouldn't it be something if he were nominated and he were confirmed? It would be a first. He would be the first Spachim to be named to the Supreme Court.
Hillary, who was blackmailed us and the supposed president, the fake, okay? By President Clinton sleeping with flowers, Hillary has blackmailed Clinton and has us. She has us hostage, okay? It's ridiculous. She can't quit until she gets a lesbian in as an attorney general. It's such a fake and a fraud. I can't believe that anyone has any pride in our government right now. It's a disaster. It's nothing but lesbians, homos, and midgets.
Well, Charlie, you are, you're thinking.
Bob, I'm sick and tired of people and the things that are happening now since Bush was taken out of office. I'm disgusted with it, okay? And I would just like to know if anybody out there is awake.
No, they're not, Charlie. I can tell you.
Are they all brain dead?
I can tell you just a small percentage of the people are, and oddly enough, that small percentage call the Bob Grant Show and listen to the Bob Grant Show. But outside of our group, really, they're walking zombies out there.
Absolutely. Hi, Bob. I'm a long-time listener. I always listen to you on the way home in the car. And I was kind of surprised that you took that position regarding Hillary Clinton spending time with her father. I thought you were more compassionate than that. I just thought it was not in your style usually.
Well, let me say this. I have no respect for that woman. I have only contempt for her. And my comment was that she was there and wishing she didn't have to be there. What is there to retract? What is there to change? What is there to alter? What was there said that was so terrible?
Well, it just showed a little insensitivity.
Oh, cut it out. A little insensitivity. I don't have any sensitivity where she's concerned.
It's a person, Bob.
On WABC, let's say hello to Joe. Joe, hello.
Chappaqua.
Yes, sir.
That fellow newsbreaker had John Fossil. Is an excellent man, very credible, and a good-looking, very honest man. I hope that he makes it. Because the voice is so beautiful, and he really...
Well, that's true. Hey, John, you hear that? You want to take over this show permanently?
He also put some creep in his place that was trying to knock you and Jake. To get to my subject...
Well, what would you expect him to do? He's the program director. What would you expect him to do?
I know, but he did it so...
Come on, don't be naive. What would you expect him to do? Come on, Al.
The way
you have to laugh at some of you people.
No,
put him in their place.
It was so...
All right, I heard the show was great. What else?
All right. I rarely...
Is that it? You're getting on my nerves. Get off the phone now.
Wait a minute.
Al gets me nervous sometimes.
And number two, on the why isn't more said about what's coming up Saturday in Vancouver when we're going to be bankrupt if America doesn't wake up?
Well, what is there to say? The Slick Willie is supposed to meet with Boris Yeltsin in Vancouver. I mean, what is there to say? I mean, at this point, what?
Well, he's only there to bankrupt us, Yeltsin. I mean, he and Gorbachev are students of Lenin. The lie is sacred, and deception is the name of the game.
Yeltsin is not a communist.
Certainly. He said everybody
Rose, you're out of touch with reality. Get off my phone, get on your broom, and get the hell out of here. You bag. Just made her a plain bag. I might promote her to douchebag next week. Pat, what's on your mind?
On a lighter note, I want to talk and complain about your comments that you were talking about those New Jersey boys. I think that's a horrendous crime, and for all the talk that you say about white men being given a bad rap, it only goes to show you how white men really regard women in the society.
White men? Get off my phone, you bigoted jerk. Let's say, by the way, Joan, I told you were persona non grata. Why do you insist on calling the program?
My name isn't Joan. It's Joanna.
All right,
I never call your program.
Huh?
I never call your program.
Oh, you never
call
a program?
I've never called in my life.
All right. Okay, fair enough. I believe you.
Okay, I have a much-loved mother-in-law who's elderly. And she often says to me, Joan, why don't you listen to Bob Grant again?
Wait a minute. You just described yourself as being named Joanne, and suddenly you quote your mother-in-law as calling you Joan. You tripped yourself up.
She calls me that, but my name is Joanne.
I see. What would you like me to call you?
You can call me Joanne.
I'll call you Joanne.
All right. Anyway, I used to listen to you, and I got very upset when I listened to you because you were so mean and despicable and treated women so bad with your mouth. It was horrible. And I stopped listening to you. And she said, Joan, listen to him. Try him again. He's so good. And she so enjoys your show, and she's elderly. And when I heard the way you talked to the last woman, Bob, you should be ashamed of yourself. You're a disgrace to the human race. You're even more of a disgrace to women. To call a woman, an elderly woman, a douchebag. What is wrong with you? Who taught you? Didn't you have a mother to teach you how to talk?
My mother never dreamed that I would wind up doing a program like this.
She probably never dreamed that you would have such a trash mouth either.
Well,
you should be ashamed,
fortunately, she's not in another city. She's not in this city. She can't hear the program.
Thank God that she isn't.
I lie to her and tell her...
Thank God that she isn't.
Yeah, you're right, Joanne. I lie to her and tell her that I'm nice.
Bob,
and she believes me.
Ashamed of yourself.
Well, I'm not ashamed of myself.
Bob,
I'd be ashamed of myself if I were a hypocrite and had these feelings and didn't voice them.
How can you talk that way when you know...
Very easy. I can talk that way very easy. They call a program. They know what they're getting into.
You know that the majority of your listeners are elderly women, and you're like rubbing their face
but they're not.
Entertainment.
Joanne, you must be working for another radio station trying to destroy the image of this radio station.
No, I certainly would not, Bob.
Joanne, I'll tell you what. Get off. Stop talking while I'm trying to talk. The demographics of this program say that the majority of our listeners are young men. What do you want from me? I don't take these surveys. Brian, you're on WABC. Hello.
I don't know if I can follow that, but...
you know what? People like that, they try to sound so self-righteous. Who the hell elected her to come along and pass judgment and decide that I'm going to do the program? Who the hell is she? Who's making her listen? Hey, Joanne, if you're listening, you too are nothing but a douchebag.
Oh, listen, Bob,
Yeah.
Yeah, you had a caller named Al at 557 today. He was a complimentary of John Minnelli and you. He was a very nice old gentleman.
Al of
Chappaqua.
Yeah,
cut him off the line.
He gets on my nerves.
But why do you wonder why crackpots and freaks call you? Shame on you, Bob.
No, I don't wonder why. I don't wonder why at all. I know why.
All right, that's honest enough. But I want you to suspend the once-a-week rule for Al and let him call back tomorrow. Be a gentleman, not a spud cheese.
Oh, get off the phone. All of a sudden, everybody's wants a manager. All of a sudden, we've got producers of the program here.
Be like comparing you, yourself, and John Minnelli.
What about John Minnelli? What about him?
To Howard Stern and baba-booey.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I think of the four of us, baba-booey is the most talented, most interesting, most entertaining guy because he has jerks like you absolutely fascinated. When you grow up, pal, why don't you call the show? In the meantime, you can still call. We have a child section. Get in your playpen and play with yourself, you jerk. We have a case of this mayor. By the way, I used to refer to him as the men's room attendant. Then the men's room attendant at 21 complained, so I had to stop. But this mayor obviously doesn't care about justice because if he did, he would be outraged over the fact that the murderer of Yankel Rosenbaum has still not been brought to justice.
I try to find out about that. I called up the U.S. attorney who was supposed to be handling this case, a lady by the name of Faith Gay. I also try to find out what happened to this here Miss Blackburn, who was supposed to be prosecuted for stealing government.
Oh, yeah, Laura Blackburn. Yeah, right. She got away with murder because she's got the right skin complexion.
Well, there's a funny thing, though, Bob. They swept it under the table. You don't hear about her. I try to find out where she's working. You know what? I couldn't find out a thing about her. They wouldn't give me any information about her. You know?
Yeah.
And also this Nimmons, this criminal they caught behind that synagogue. All of a sudden, he's pretty quiet, only because he got caught stealing again.
That's
you notice how they hushed that up, didn't you?
Yeah, but they tried to railroad a Hasidic man as being accused of the guy that was supposed to have beaten this fellow up.
Bob, I think
¿Cómo está, Paisan? May I say something nice about El Supremo?
You don't have to ask my permission.
Okay. Mario, che las facim, cornuto, nasole nase beep. You need a swift case of cazzo de frido to the left and to the right. You disgraziato. That's something nice.
Hey, let me see that contract. Hey, Minnelli, come on. Minnelli keeps our contracts in a drawer under lock and key. I want to see that contract. I want to see how much longer it has to run. I really got to get out of here, John. I despise this. Let me see. In perpetuity? For heaven's sake.
El Supremo and Flim Flam, and I didn't want you to forget about that arrogant, pompous, egotistical, conceited windbag that we have over here, whose name is Lowell Weicker.
The rotting pumpkin. He reminds me of a pumpkin that had been put out on the porch for Halloween, and the people forgot to bring it inside. And, you know, the jack-o'-lantern face he has, it's deteriorating. It's collapsing because the guy is a miserable skunk.
This is true. This is true. That having a
pusillanimous, feckless turd couple. Hey, Ted.
This is Ted Couple. I'm Ted Couple, and this is Nightline.
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Ted Couple, because I know he listens to this show. Hey, Ted Couple, what happened to Iran Gate and the investigation of that, you pusillanimous, feckless, left-wing creep?
Cowering in fear? That was cowering in fear?
You kept your mouth?
That was cowering in fear? First of all, that idiot with the writing crop, whatever he was such a buffoon that he was more laugh-provoking than anything else. Secondly, Anthony, what does it take to sit home and watch your television screen and comment about a guy who's on television or about a guy who's on radio? You know what, Anthony? I wouldn't trade places with you because here I am on radio, on television, and you have to sit there and you have to watch, you have to listen. Eat your heart out, you slime ball. Get off my phone. That slams the lid on things for today. And ladies and gentlemen, that's just one less radio program I'll have to do. That's great. That's one less. Let me see how many more of these stupid things I have yet. Check it out. Benelli, where's that contract?
About who should be Supreme Court Justice.
Why do you hesitate, Vinny?
I'd like to talk about who should be Supreme Court Justice. I think Bill Bradley. His name never came up. And I think it would be a fine man.
On WABC, I know that Vinny, who sounds like a real moron, was leading up to something, so I hung up on him. Boy, did he sound like what he is. A low-life, low-class Gavone, a moron, a DJ.
I was listening today to WABC from 11 to 12, and that was the most boring hour I ever heard. David Dinkins, what does he talk about? Mosaic and society? I mean, where did he all get him?
No, he's a fool. He's a clown. You know, if it weren't such a tragedy that he is the mayor of the greatest city in the country, it would be funny. We could laugh.